Hey, what's up, guys? Little Osprey showcase on the Blue Division, right? The Spanish volunteers, the nationalists who decided to repay Germany by going after the country that backed their Republican enemies, the Soviet Union. Really good book, done by these Spanish guys, illustrated by Spanish artists. The Spanish artists keep mentioning them in the Filipinos, very underrated artists. So and it gives you a little breakdown of what the situation was. Okay, the whole idea hinges on why is it called the Blue Division? Well, the blue shirt was the like the black shirts for the Italians. The blue shirt was worn as part of the uniform of the Phalange. Who are the Phalange? Well, you can say they're the Spanish fascists, but the have their own national characteristics. Uh, they were third positionists. Like I keep mentioning the third position. They believed Spain was in need of a revolution along the Italian and German models. They wanted a revolution that would bring both social justice and ambitious economic modernization. Oh, right? But they're against communists. Well, right? In many ways, the third position represents trying to recreate the Ur tradition in the context of modernity, appealing to the heroic past, okay, of people's shared, not just blood, but culture, traditions, okay, which actually is against, uh, in many ways, the evils of modernity itself. Okay, obviously, it didn't work, but regardless, when the war against the Soviet Union begins, you get many volunteers. Okay, many of them are phalangists. Right? You see the people giving the Roman salute. But you also had others joining them. Right? You had many volunteers who were not phalangists. You had conservatives, monarchists, Catholics. I had mentioned the Carlists in the Peter Kemp book, Mimer of Trouble, that I reviewed last year. They were certainly no less anti-communist, regardless if they were not didn't agree with the phalangists on other things. The Blue Division essentially were, they were light infantry. They were like the Italians, mostly light infantry. They weren't really mechanized. They fought in the kind of more static, sort of defensive, offensive, but not maneuver warfare that you had, particularly like in the middle part, the middle front, and especially the northern front, the siege of Leningrad, okay, and the areas around it. And you had two different waves. You had a lot of professional soldiers coming in the second wave. Some of the phalangists they went back. They saw, as usual, that the real battle is at home. Okay, and conveniently, Franco was not a phalangist, and many of the phalanges were out there in the east, but they were having little to no influence back home. Okay, which was in the end to be a problem for Spain, which I'll go over later. But of course, they were all equipped with German weapons, but the most basic weapons. They weren't really given heavy weapons and uniforms. And it's interesting too. You got the commander, the greatest commander of the Blue Division, Munoz Grandes. Okay, was the most division's most outstanding commander from a family with no military tradition. Right, he commanded colonial troops in Morocco. Had been wounded. He was not for the monarchy. Did not sympathize with the monarchy when the Republic was installed in Spain. But he was a very religious man, and the phalangists were interesting in that as their positionists, they were very, very Catholic. Okay, he ended up getting in trouble with them and joined Franco and the Nationalists. As a commander of his men, he was very much a man of his men. He was an equal. Okay, the later commander, he didn't die. Munoz stayed longer than he wanted to, but he eventually got rotated out. The commander that took over was more of a traditional Mediterranean type, Royal Italian army type commander. We're the aristocrats, they're the men, and he wasn't as well liked, but he was still a pretty capable officer. Remember, these guys had combat experience. Okay? And there's the phalangist symbol, the yoke and the arrows. Okay? So it goes over pretty much. It shows the problem with the NCO issue that they had. Okay, they didn't have, like in the Anglo countries, they didn't really have an NCO that was like a mediator between the soldiers and the commanders as much. But in terms of the tactics, excuse me, The Spanish were definitely, they were not motorized, they were not mechanized. It was more static warfare, and that's where they were wisely put. And it's funny too. The Germans, of course, were not too impressed with the Spanish discipline. Like this, I like this thing here with the Spanish customer putting their hands in their pockets annoyed the Germans greatly. Mi amigo, right? And also they saw a lot of guys were getting hurt by mortar fire. Okay, and they realized that many of the Spanish troops considered it unmanly to seek shelter from this kind of projectile. Okay, Germans would jump, hit the deck when the mortars were going. The Spanish would laugh. Of course, sometimes the Spanish would get hit by these mortars and would get killed. Right? And it was interesting too. They would do things like they would use their bugles to issue orders in the front line. They would go into phalangist hymns to start the assaults and scream at the enemy and go right at them, just like many of the Italians used to do. Right? So and here you get the paella, right, which is the kind of I guess Spanish sort of stew. I'm always familiar with paella as a seafood thing. And of course, in the Minor World of Trouble, when I went over that Peter Kemp book, the bota, right, this thing which made even, like I said, it made even the lousiest wine taste good, right. And so and here they are in combat here in these swampy areas around the Volkhov Pocket, one of these many places that you never really heard of, where there was a lot of fighting and a lot of guys died, right. And then I want to bring this up now, especially the Battle of Krasny Bor. This is one of the last battles that the Blue Division was in, even though the Blue Legion was formed of guys that decided to stay behind. Of course, now they were starting to face the increasing Soviet, the reinforcements were coming, the T-34s and everyone in large, huge onslaught numbers. And you had this battle here. I'm going to bring up another brave man. Spanish Engineer Corporal Antonio Ponte Anido, right, was awarded the San Fernando Cross for his part in taking on the T-34s and the tanks. And observing a Russian tank about to attack a first aid post housing main defenses with the men, he raced to place anti-tank mines under the tracks. The explosion stopped the tank but resulted in his death. And there he is. Look at that. Look at this. Look at this friggin' monster coming. And these guys are like, and this guy, look at him. He's gonna save his comrades. Right, what a shame a man like this had to die so young. Right. And also of interest too, the Spanish troops were impressed by the quality of the German weapons. But they also came to appreciate the Soviet weapons were often more reliable and hard-wearing, like the PPSH submachine gun, like this thing. You see tons of photos of German soldiers and other soldiers in the Axis grabbing this thing whenever they could. This was a really good weapon. The thing never jammed. Okay? For the most part, look at that. But that's an example of the great artwork. So they go over other things, right? The propaganda. Now they always like to emphasize the difference between the Germans and particularly the Mediterraneans, right? The Germans were preoccupied with the lack of discipline. There was the racist views. Oh, come on, bro. The Germans, the Spanish volunteers were this and that. Listen, Europeans don't like each other. Okay, I knew that. I know that as an American. Okay, although I don't think they hate each other even as much as we seem to do. But sorry about that. But one thing the Germans, like I said, they can never say that these guys weren't brave and these guys weren't tough. And another thing too, just like with the Italians, they had pretty good relations with the Ukrainians, the Russians, the Chechens. I'm gonna tell you another thing. Despite what they tell you, that every German was like looking to kill these subhumans, most German soldiers didn't do that. A lot of Germans actually got along with the Russians and the Ukrainians. They felt bad for them to live the lives they did under Bolshevism. Okay, but they only focus on the Germans that did bad things. Okay, just like you know that. But the Spanish and the Italians really got along with them, and many of these people risked their necks to help these guys later when things got, when they would get caught behind the lines or whatnot. So now eventually we know how this ends, right? When the war turns, Spain is sort of like, we're not really in this, so we're gonna call them back. But like I said, you had volunteers stay and fight to some in Berlin even to the end. Okay, and also the issue of the prisoners, just like with the Italians and the Germans, many of these guys, Spanish prisoners, didn't come back until the 50s. Okay, right. They established good relations with some of the Germans, above all with the Italians. Yeah, the fellow Meds. So, there was a strong Spanish presence. They even ruled part of, especially in Napoli, but in the south. Right? But anyway, enough of that. And this is a book, right? Ambassador in Hell, about captivity in the Gulag. But after the war, now, of course, the whole thing with Spain is that Spain tries to become more friendly to Western countries, which is made easy because now all of a sudden, after the war, the communists are now the bad guys are good. Right? They should have been the bad guys all along. But hey, man, I didn't make history. I was born 5 years after this. But and today, the Veterans Association. The irony is that by marginalizing the phalangists, right? Franco ensured, right, that that Spain would eventually become a leftist country. Okay, dethrone an altar that Franco was for, betrayed him, and the phalangists, of course, are now. I believe there's a party there now. I'm not sure, but regardless. You lose the peace, okay, because you didn't do the social reform. You didn't realize there were inequities that appeal to justifiably, okay, that appeal to people that left offers that many of the conservatives don't. Franco is essentially the symbol of the failure of conservatism, even if I do respect the guy. But regardless, this is something we only know now. They couldn't have foreseen a lot of this thing. But and in terms of the Blue Division, most of the guys, of course, like they're passing on, right? The division's few remaining survivors pass away on the wishes of the deceased. When the obituary is published in the press, there's no mention of their career, qualifications, honors, only the simple phrase, a veteran of the Blue Division. Right. So, and and the phalange imagery of it is always there. Okay, so you could see what could have been in Spain, what could have been in Europe at the third position, which was pretty much annihilated. You could say by the Soviet Union, but mainly by this country that I'm sitting here making this video with. But anyway, all hail the Blue Division. Later.